Most people, when they find out their husband is cheating, confront him immediately. They cry, they scream, they demand answers. She didn't do any of that. She made a plan instead. This is Serena's story. Serena and her husband Daniel had been married for 7 years. They had a daughter together, a home they'd built over time, a life that looked, from the outside, completely solid. She trusted him completely, not because she was naive, but because she had 7 years of evidence that he was trustworthy. Or so she thought. Her best friend Maya had been in her life even longer than Daniel, over a decade, the kind of friendship where you share everything, secrets, fears, the deepest parts of yourself. Serena had shared Daniel with Maya too, the way you do with your best friend, introduced them early in the relationship, invited her to the wedding, made her part of the family. That turned out to be a mistake she couldn't have anticipated. The discovery didn't happen the way these things do in movies. There was no dramatic confrontation, no lipstick on a collar, no suspicious late night. It happened because of their daughter. One afternoon, Serena came home earlier than expected to pick up something she'd forgotten. Her daughter was home. She'd been dropped off by a neighbor after school. And when Serena walked through the front door, her daughter said something that stopped her cold. She'd seen something a child that age shouldn't have seen, in her own home, involving her father and a woman she knew as her mother's best friend. Serena didn't react in front of her daughter. She kept her face completely neutral, got what she came for, and left. She sat in her car in the driveway for 20 minutes before she could drive. In those 20 minutes, Serena made a decision that would define everything that came after. She wasn't going to confront Daniel yet. She wasn't going to call Maya. She wasn't going to cry or scream or demand explanations, because she already knew what had happened. She didn't need confirmation. She had it, from a source that couldn't be argued with. What she needed now wasn't answers. She needed time. Time to make sure that when everything fell apart, she was the one holding the pieces that mattered. She drove to her sister's house, told her everything, and the two of them started making a list. The first thing Serena did was call a lawyer, not a marriage counselor, not a therapist, a divorce attorney, that same week, to understand exactly what she was entitled to and exactly what she needed to document before Daniel had any idea she knew. The lawyer told her to start keeping records, every joint account, every asset, every financial decision Daniel had made recently that she might not have been aware of. What she found when she started looking wasn't pretty. Daniel had been moving money, not enormous amounts, but consistent small transfers to an account she hadn't known existed, enough to make her wonder how long this had been going on and whether the affair was the only thing he'd been hiding. She documented everything. Printed statements, took screenshots, filed them with her attorney, and said nothing to Daniel. She kept going to dinner with him, kept sleeping in the same bed, kept answering his texts as if everything was normal. She says it was the hardest acting she's ever done in her life. The second part of the plan came together over the following 2 weeks. Their joint account had enough in it for both of them to live comfortably for several months. Serena had her own income. She'd always kept her career going, something Daniel had sometimes teased her about, saying she didn't need to work as hard as she did. She was grateful for that now. Working with her attorney and her own separate account, she moved her share of the joint funds, everything she was legally entitled to based on her contributions, into an account in her name only. She timed it carefully. Not so early that Daniel would notice before she was ready, not so late that she'd miss her window. Then she waited for the right moment for part 3. Daniel's car was one of the things he cared most about in the world. A car he'd bought himself, he always said, though Serena knew their shared finances had contributed more to that purchase than he liked to admit. One Saturday, Daniel told her he was going to be out for the afternoon. She knew where he was going. She'd known for weeks. While he was gone, Serena arranged for the car to be sold. It was titled in both their names, something Daniel had never thought twice about, because why would he? They were married. They trusted each other. The sale went through, the pink slip transferred, and then Serena did something that, by her own admission, was probably the most petty and most satisfying thing she's ever done in her life. She mailed the pink slip to Maya's parents' house, with a note. The note said simply, "Your daughter should know what she helped pay for." Daniel came home that evening, and Serena told him everything she knew. Not as a question, not as an accusation waiting for a denial, as a statement of fact, backed up by everything she'd spent weeks documenting. She told him about the lawyer, about the account, about the car. She says his face cycled through about 6 different emotions in 30 seconds. Shock, anger, guilt, panic, before settling on something that looked like someone calculating damage. He tried to explain. She let him talk. She'd already heard everything she needed to hear. She told him she wanted him out of the house by the end of the week, that she had legal documentation of everything, that any attempt to contest the accounts or the car sale would result in her attorney sharing the financial records she'd found, the ones about the account he'd been keeping from her, with the court. He left within 3 days. Maya reached out twice, once by text, once by phone. Serena didn't respond to either. She'd spent a decade building that friendship, and she didn't know Maya a single word of her explanation, her anger, or her grief. She says the loss of the friendship hurt in a way that was almost separate from the loss of the marriage. Different shape, different weight. She'd trusted Maya with things she'd never told anyone else, and Maya had used that access, that intimacy, in the worst possible way. She says some betrayals are so complete that there's nothing left to say. You just close the door and don't look back. The divorce moved faster than either of them expected, largely because Daniel didn't have much ground to stand on. The documentation Serena had built was thorough, her attorney was good, and Daniel, to his credit, eventually stopped fighting and accepted the terms. She kept the house. He got his portion of what remained in the accounts, less than he'd expected given what her attorney had documented about the transfers. The car, of course, was already gone. Maya and Daniel's relationship didn't survive the exposure either. Apparently, the combination of the note to her parents, the fallout with mutual friends, and the general chaos of everything coming out was more than whatever they'd built could handle. Serena says she doesn't find that satisfying exactly, more like clarifying. Serena and her daughter moved on. It took time, more time than she expected, even having planned as carefully as she did. The planning had given her control, but it hadn't protected her from the grief that came after. She says the hardest part wasn't the divorce itself. It was adjusting to a version of her life that didn't include the 2 people she'd trusted most in the world. But she also says there's something she didn't expect on the other side of all of it, a kind of clarity she hadn't had in years, like a window that had been slightly foggy for a long time, finally coming clean. She's not in a rush to trust anyone like that again, but she's not closed off either. She says she just knows now what she's willing to accept and what she isn't. And she knows she's capable of more patience, more strategy, and more composure under pressure than she ever gave herself credit for. If you've ever found out that the people you trusted most were the ones doing the most damage, you know exactly how Serena felt sitting in that driveway. This was a dramatized story inspired by real experiences shared online. If it got to you, subscribe for more and let us know in the comments. Would you have planned it out the way she did? Or would you have confronted him the moment you found out?